Women were not the target of patriarchy. I think men are the target of patriarchy. I think that patriarchy was designed to subjugate men, to be able to send them off to war. We don't count how many men die at war. To send them to do the most dangerous jobs, to send them down the mines, into diamond mines, go into all this unnecessary shit that we don't actually need.
Pause. Later in the stream, we're going to be covering a conservative who makes the same argument, but out of a conservative perspective. So men under patriarchy and conservatism say, we die in mines. We go to war for you. We fight for this country, and you don't appreciate it. The left, feminism, progressivism, liberalism will say, hold up, why are you dying in mines? What if, hear me out, you don't die in wars? And then the same men, they're like, you don't care that I'm dying in a war, won't also take the path of no longer dying in those wars because they want to die in the war so they can say they're men. And that is the bullshit of patriotism, yes, but patriarchy.
The planet. All this excess is all created so that wealthy men can send young, healthy men to do the dog's body work for them, often lower, like working class men or people with lower status.
People trying to get out of poverty are convinced, people who are low income, my brothers had, quote, no future and no trajectory. So what do? They join the military. The brothers who, there was three, maybe one out of the four brothers who signed up didn't have a technical goal in mind, but three of them were definitely like, I don't know what I'm doing. This might give me an opportunity to do something. I don't have a job. I didn't go to college. Now, one of those four brothers, two were medically discharged and two served their full 4 years, both of which were deployed. And one of those two ended up going to college and getting a degree. But the other one who served their full 4 years and did that, as far as I know, has not gone to college and finished that. So kind of interesting too, like, who uses this as a way to get ahead and who uses it, as like sort of something to do just to say they did it. It's very interesting, this relationship with joining the military. What does it mean?
And so men are victims of higher violence than women. Men are victims in some countries of more sexual violence because of the rape that happens in prison.
I caution the wording of that statistic, like men are victims of more violence than women. I would very much caution the way that is explained. Men on men crime is very high, but most perpetrators of violence are men towards all genders. And the most victim, I would argue, if you put it into a gender perspective, like I think women are ultimately more in gender fluid people are more at harm under patriarchy than men, but I can see her perspective already being an argument that men are most at harm under patriarchy. But again, it's not a competition, but it sends a message to men again to infantilize themselves and to say that, well, if we're the most victim, then what does it matter if women are? And then men will also follow that and say, but women do violence too. It's like such a small percentage, it's not even the focus. And that's the point. Now, I do inherently believe that men are not this way inherently. It is not just a predisposition of their biological experience, that I do think people that are boys and that are men can and are influenced by culture in society. And that if we raised men differently, the violence statistics would change. And I do think most of those women who are even violent are violent because of the training they got under patriarchy. So much of my relationship to being in my masculinity, to like being strong, came directly from patriarchy. Like as much as women want to talk about, and they do, strength in women as a form of femininity, no relationship to strength in my life ever came from my relationship of being like a woman. It always came from my relationship with being a strong man. And so I don't have that lived relationship. Like I see it. I think it's beautiful. I recognize it. But personally, I do attribute my conditioning under patriarchy to be my interest in extreme sports, my interest in buying dirt bikes, my interest in tattoos, my interest in rock music, my interest in like fast cars. Like everything I ever liked growing up came from my boy brain and like came from like my boy self and my relationship to that thing. So I had to deconstruct a lot of that internalized like misogyny that I held also in my life, right? So I think there's a lot there to be said about like what is strength, what is masculinity, what is your relationship to, and also can we like these things without it also relating to misogyny? Can we like fast cars without thinking women can't drive them? Can we like tattoos without trying to be like women get pussy butterfly tattoos and men get strong skeleton tattoos? Like, can we deconstruct our relationship to these things and doesn't have to come at the expense of a group who, quote, can't handle it, right?
Patriarchy is so damaging for men. 60% of the gun deaths in America are men turning the gun on themselves, the male suicide rate. Patriarchy is designed to subjugate men. And what they did, which was so genius, was to tell men, oh no, women are the target. So you subjugate them, and then you won't notice how much we are subjugating you, how much we are stealing from you. And so I think it's so sad that men are so gullible, easy to manipulate, that they haven't realized this. They're the ones who, as all of Europe are calling to increase their armies, the ones who are voluntary are girls to join up. Whereas we're discussing that in the next 5 years, countries like Germany are going to mandate conscription. That's going to be teenage boys, young men, anyone under the age of 60 maybe, who has to stay and fight. Men are the ultimate dog's body target of patriarchy, and women are profoundly impacted, and in many ways now more so impacted, but only because men don't realize that they're the fucking target. And rather than fight with us against patriarchy together, which would save their lives at higher numbers, the ego trip of being able to just feel like someone's lower than me is enough for them to be sated.
Well, that's sort of like why it works with capitalism so well. Capitalism is I did it and you did it poorly, right? Like I'm better with money and you're worse with money. There's, again, the individual responsibility and the way the system impacts that individual. And these things are different, right? Individual men versus systems of patriarchy are different things. That's why not all men, okay, this is like the same thing with police brutality. If white people got together with BLM and protested the police, they're the white people being targeted by police officers, which happens, not because they're white, but because police officers are corrupt, right? Would seek and get liberation by protesting with, but because white people were unable to understand Black Lives Matter isn't a white lives don't matter, they sided with the blue, right? And so it's like people are their own worst enemy. We cannot understand the difference between a group excluding us and a group including us if it doesn't also have us as the star. And that's why you're the majority. This is what it's so difficult to explain. This is why we're going to go back to the basics for this new year. Again, if your inclusion, if you don't understand BLM is not about white people, but it's about saying, hey, like we as a group matter as Black people, like they as a group matter against this systematic oppression that also white people suffer from. Like that's really, if you can't get that, that's really difficult, which is why I remember there was, I remember the white people in my life started to watch police brutality videos of like white people being brutalized by the police. And they were like, oh, they started getting angry. And I was like, oh, so now you're mad. Because truthfully, this is the racism of it all. They really believe that Black people just do not know how to interact with cops. Like that is the racism. That's how they've been trained. So when they started watching white people have a hard time with the cops, they were like, wait a second. And I was like, Now, funny enough, my family growing up, the Assyrian part of the family, always had a problem with cops in a sense because they always saw them as like, traffic cops. Who likes a traffic cop? Nobody, okay? And at the same time, we understand that we call the police when we're in trouble. And at the same time, we understand you're not supposed to call the cops because this is a family matter. So I grew up in all those bubbles where like we never called the police on family because like we could handle it. And the 1 or 2 times police got called, it was like, I cannot believe you called the police. The police? You called the police? It's like a big deal. And then all of a sudden, my dad has a Back the Blue on his truck. And I was like, what is that? He's like, we're backing the blue. And I was like, why is that on your truck? How does this even relate to the way you raised me? And he was like, well, it's different now. It's different because, like BLM and all these groups. And I'm like, oh, what's happening? And it's because there was a disconnect because a lot of immigrants come to the United States and identify as white first and foremost. Even when they're not. Even when they're literally brown, they will identify as white. And I'm like, hello? And like that is the difficult part of communicating to people that like you are siding with the wrong side of history, but they can't see it because they think they're the good ones. I made it in capitalism. I made it in America. I'm the good immigrant who does well with the police. I made it, I made the American dream, and that's all they need. And so again, it's a hierarchy of I'm better than you. And that's what we need to deconstruct. You're not better than people. You know, we can talk about individual ethics like predatory behavior and all of that stuff, but you're not better than people because you figured out money and other people didn't. Because that same family, that same immigrant dream that my parents feel like they upheld, they also bring into question why their kids are more financially stable, even though we're all middle class. And a big part of it is like, you didn't even have your finances in order. You did not sit down with us and teach us these things. We get to learn on our own, just like you had to learn on your own. It's not like my parents broke the generational curse by teaching us about money. My parents at no point have sat me down and really had that conversation with me. We have had conversations about money. We have had conversations about Roths and, you know, mutual funds and all of that stuff. But they do not sit their kids down and teach them step by step how things work. And that's because they fall into that conservative notion that like live by example is enough. It's not. We know it's not enough. It wasn't enough for your boys to avoid Andrew Tate. It wasn't enough for your kids to avoid, quote, conditioning from other bubbles. Living by example is never enough. You have to that and more, right? And I think that's what people are missing is like people don't know. So of course these men who are looking at patriarchy don't understand what it is. And they don't understand that it's not us being against white people or poor people or men. It's us saying as long as you side with the system that oppresses both of us, you're part of the issue. The moment you decide with the rest of us against the opposition, against the oppressor, against the system, we love you. But we can't trust you if you're going to sell us out to the same people that are fucking both of us over. And that's the issue. They don't get that they are fucking us over and themselves. And so they can't be trusted. And they just happen to generally be men, white people, straight people, generally, because they are the majority, which they know. They know they're the majority. They love to brag about it all the time. We're the normal ones. Cool. And yet they want to be the counterculture. They want to be the rebels. They also want both. They want to be the normal and they want to be the rebel. Which one is it? Are you the normal? Are you the majority or are you the rebels? Can't be both, girls.
Yet they're still dying and killing themselves in ridiculous numbers. You see this even with the working class in this country or in America or many countries. You go, but at least you're not migrants. Look at someone who's got less than you and brutalize them.
So how would you define patriarchy then? Because I suppose when I'm hearing you, I hear something that I talk about a lot with my friends where I've got a lot of working class male friends who would say to me, when you talk about the patriarchy, I don't hear it serving me, right? These are working class men who are struggling.
They're the number one target of the patriarchy.
So they're like, what you're talking about benefits like 1% of men. And I say, well, it might benefit them the most, but what benefits them also then trickles down to you in many ways. Not you, obviously, I mean them. By which I mean, right, the idea, for example, that they are inherently more authoritative, that they should necessarily be paid more because, you know, they're the breadwinner. And, you know, of course, a man has to be given work.
But also a working class man versus a working class woman, she's going to be more subjugated than he is in every single way. I'm not saying that we don't need to pay attention. I mean, all I do is talk about liberating women and women's rights. I'm saying that we can't do this without men, and nor should we. And they're not doing us a fucking favor. That they would
Okay, we can't do this without men. We can't do this, period. You can't liberate women out of patriarchy. Because I don't think men can liberate themselves either. Like, this is the part of my work that is maybe too hard, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't actually think you can do this on a large enough scale in our lifetime to matter, but I think you would need to make the effort to philosophically encourage great change in people. Because I do think it's a little out of our hands. I do think it's a matter of like, it's like trying to stop a tsunami. You can make the effort, but first we have to do this other stuff. I don't think, because, you know, a lot of people feel this way, like, oh, Brittany, sometimes I feel like your channel is anti-men. I have fully accepted that, like, you're not going to get on board. I have tried for all of my life to get men on board, and I've never been successful. And so I have to let go of this idea that you're going to get on board. I've tried being nice. I've tried being compassionate. I've tried siding with you when I shouldn't have. I have tried making so much just like space for you, and you take it over and ruin it. So I've radically accepted that it would be better to help individual men, to encourage women as a collective to keep moving forward, to focus on trans rights and gay rights. And I have personally, in my own lived experience, though limited, have come to the realization that like men aren't ready. They're not ready. And they're not ready for a lot of reasons, but they're not ready because it's scary and they're afraid. And they're just not ready to admit that either. The issue is like, I'm done being afraid. Like a lot of minority people, I think we're just kind of done being afraid. I think a lot of people are afraid for good reasons, but a lot of us are done. And so we are done being afraid because it's all or nothing. We're here for a very short time and then we die. And if we stay afraid, we'll stagnate the way men have as a group. And it's never going to benefit us to stagnate the way it can still benefit them. They ironically can still kind of benefit in a way. Like they don't even know in which ways they are so much more, they have so much more accessibility and potential under patriarchy because they're too afraid to even look at that. So if it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of their own failure, but then they blame women. And I'm just telling you right now, women are never blaming individual men for their failures. They're blaming men as a system, but men blame individual women for their failures. Because most of the women that, like most of the bosses you are facing are not women. Most of your teachers are not women. Like most of the people you're learning from are not women. Most of your mentors in these high level jobs are not women. You know, individual women aren't even rejecting you. Women as a system aren't rejecting you. But as a system, it's so much harder for women to even be accepted in the group in general. And right now, the amount of transphobia, bigotry, homophobia out there in the world, like you guys are saying you're the normal ones. We believe in the nuclear family, men and women. That automatically alienates us. You have the upper hand. Do something with it. But you can't. So you stop yourself and then you blame us. Like, it is what it is. It is so much harder for women to move forward in the world. And so when you see us doing it in colleges, when you see us doing it and you're like, oh my God, you're getting ahead of me. Know that it's because we're working 10 times harder. That's it. That's all that's happening. And that's why it's still not a majority of women. That's why women are still suffering, because it is 10 times harder and it's really fucking hard. Okay? You add in all the caveats of being a black woman, a disabled person, a trans person, anything that the world already hates because it doesn't work within capitalism or patriarchy. That's all that's happening. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but they don't believe it, right? It's very hard to believe it. And I get why it's hard to believe it. Because I've believed certain things like that too, where I'm like, oh no, if you just XYZ'd, it's not like that, okay? Chet says awareness is just one step, action is after, and men aren't at awareness while the rest of us are actioning our ass off. Exactly. And I can't wait around. Like, it feels like this. Like, let's go, girl. Let's go. And they can't. And I know this from the men in my life. I know this from the very men in my life. Here's the difference between the men and women in my life, generally speaking. This is a huge generalization. The women in my life will be so transparent with bank statements, history, subscriptions, everything they're doing on the internet. The men are ashamed. Why are you afraid to show me your search history? Show me your bank account. You say you have this much, show it to me. The women in my life, the trans people in my life, the gender fluid, whatever, like the, LGBT people in my life, they're like transparent. Because we know as a minority, the greatest strength is transparency. But when you're the majority, when you're men, the way they shield, the way they fake success, you know what I mean? I think that plays a big role in. That's the difference between community efforts and individual efforts. I'll just be transparent. This is how much debt I have. This is what I'm working on. Here's where I'm at. Here's how I did. Versus they're creating all these. So then they're like, why do you think I'm a liar? Why can't you trust me? Because when I ask for transparency, you can't give it because you're ashamed. You have to deconstruct that shame. But that shame comes from patriarchy. Why aren't you 25 and a millionaire? Why don't you own a Bugatti? Even though if Andrew Tate had to be transparent about how he made his money, he couldn't be. Which is why, All right.
Separate themselves from the fact that they are slaves, essentially, to much wealthier powers up top. And when a war comes, they will be the ones sent off to it. When a dangerous job is needed, they will be the ones sent to do it. When a disgusting job is needed, they will be the ones sent to do it for a minimal fee compared to however much the fat cat in the top office is earning. They need to wake up and realize that we are all being fucked by the same system, and you would liberate yourselves by liberating us. And I think that men are ultimately more submissive than women naturally. And I think you see this even in dogs and pets. Girl cats on girl dogs are fucking impossible to train, whereas boys are.
I don't like the inherently or naturally or biologically, like I don't believe in this narrative. Hold on, let's rewind it.
And ultimately more submissive than women naturally. And I think
I don't believe in that bioessentialism crap. Like, oh, naturally men are more submissive, women. I don't believe in any of that crap. I think it is conditioned. I think some people are having a different biological experience, but generally as a group, like, we do not understand yet, because we think, like, yes, everything that is a result of today is biological, but our ability to have a deeper relationship with our biological experience is predicated on our ability to evoke any limited free will we have. And we just haven't even started to do that. We haven't even began to do that in a world where men are too afraid to wear nail polish, let alone dresses. Like, you can't even know the potential of a person called a man until he can walk outside with a dress on without any repercussion. Like, you don't even know the potential of humanity until we deconstruct that boys wear blue and girls wear pink. You know what I mean? So, like, I just disagree with this, because I think gender is a constructed relationship with self. I do not think every man is having the same relationship with self. I think categories of men and categories of women and categories of non-binary people and categories of XYZ are having similar experiences, but at the end of the day, it's not a monolithic one.
See this even in dogs and pets. Girl cats on girl dogs are fucking impossible to train, whereas boys are more likely to fall in line. And you look at the army and you look at ICE.
Boys are willing to fall in line because that's the dream. The dream is having a cool leader. The dream is being the next leader. The dream is like they want to be told what to do, but that's not unique to men. Women also like that shit. We like structure. Human beings love structure, consistency, community. It's like the three things we've studied that we know human beings need. So I don't agree with this. What I do believe, though, is they've been conditioned under patriarchy to be followers and get to call themselves leaders. Women are trained to be followers, but never get to call themselves leaders. This is how you know men have more privilege under patriarchy, because you're following the fuck out of Andrew Tate and you still get to think of yourself as an alpha. That is what patriarchy is. That's not about nature or biology or inherent this, that. This is about conditioning. Men convince other men that they are leaders while they're following. And women, even when they're leaders, are still followers. You see a woman who's financially successful and they'll say, where's her husband? You'll see a 22-year-old boy who says he's a millionaire and they'll be like, wow, you're really self-made. Except you don't think about his parents and the fact that his college was paid for, or the fact that he never paid for his first car, or the fact that his dad gave him a loan. Cool. Got it.
And you look at the people who volunteer to do these really mad, dangerous jobs. It's men. Men are more likely to follow orders. Like all the manosphere is complaining about constantly is how we cannot train these hoes. They cannot get these hoes to fall in line. And it's remarkable to me. And I think that it's evident in the fact that patriarchy can only be upheld violently. It shows it's not natural. And I think men like to follow orders from other men and women don't. If we were going to be able to be subjugated, if we were naturally submissive, it would have happened by now. We would have submitted. But even in Afghanistan, the women who are not allowed to sing, to speak, to look out of both eyes are still taking to the streets and protesting. The women in Iran, they're fighting back. The women in America, they're fighting back. We are difficult to control because we don't actually fall in line.
Well, I would say that men's desire to romanticize the hero trope is also a signal of that. I think it's a human experience to want to be free. I think if anything is inherent to our nature, it's our desire to explore and to be. And I think that we have sort of a calling to have maybe that deeper relationship with self, maybe. But I don't think that this is the only issue I have with her language is because I don't know what she means, but I don't think men are inherently, as in born as, meaning like naturally predisposition to. Like, I think that should be deconstructed.
We're not naturally submissive. Without violence, we cannot be forced to submit. And so I think we need to reevaluate this, and men need to understand they are naturally much more inherently submissive. And I think that perhaps the patriarchy fears that if men were to spend too much time with women and to listen to women and to follow the lead of women, they might find their own inner rebellion. And all of the men I know who are the most rebellious, or look at, David Bowie or Prince or all these different men who are such great leaders, Mamdani, all of these people.
Prince? Wasn't he Jehovah Witness Prince?
There is a strong feminine energy in them. They're manly fucking men, but they have a strong...
Are they manly fucking men? Is that how you would describe Prince and David Bowie? Are they super manly men?
feminine quality.
I think this is reductive. I think this is like liberalism perspective. I do not think this is in any way like well read. I'm sorry.
Them in their empathy and their softness and their generosity. And that's what makes them great leaders. And that's what makes them rebels. It's the...
When was David Bowie or Prince a leader? Am I confused? What is this example? I just disagree with this.
Feminine in them. All the most masculine men I know just want to fall in line and be told what to do by another man.
So do you feel like...
Yes. People like a good leader. They love a good mentor. They want to believe that people have something to teach us. Something I get from One Piece every time I watch it is like, I love that Luffy, though the main character and is absolutely has plot armor, also is humble enough to take leadership and mentorship from people. Like every time Luffy meets somebody who knows more than him, he learns from them. That's what we need. We need to not disregard our desire to constantly be a student. What men inherently are doing is they want to be a student, right? They want to learn, as they should. We all want to learn. We should not all be leaders in that sense. We should not all be the people who claim to know. We should all be students. Even the leaders should be students. The question is, are we humble enough to learn from everybody around us, right? So I don't know. Like I kind of like struggle, I think, with this like narrative, I suppose, right? But I think like she's intuitively seeing something, or maybe she's seeing a pattern that is like apparent. Why do men like to follow? Why are they so easily swayed? But not because they're men. Because they want to learn from somebody. Like, that's why I always thought it was funny in my life when boys came to me for advice while following these like very misogynistic men, but they would still come to me for advice, but they would never like kind of admit out loud that they were talking to women because they're like, you know, learning, you know. But I think ultimately what it is they need to deconstruct from this sort of who is somebody to get advice from. Because what they accidentally do is they also pedestal people. They shouldn't be doing that either for women or men. I was watching this finance channel that was talking about like billionaire women. Like, let's interview these billionaire women. And, you know, again, if you buy into capitalism and buy into this narrative and buy into this like, oh my God, you're amazing, you're a billionaire. You know, then it's like amazing thing women did. Whoa, this whole like, look at all these women billionaires. But then if you're anti-billionaire, you're like looking at this video like, so it very much comes from like also the bubble you're in. Are you in a bubble that only cares about your net worth? Or are you in a bubble that cares more about like how you treat the community? Also, her sweater says, "'Tis the season to free Palestine." And I just recognize that. So I love that. Like I love the, you know, because, you know, there's like a genocide happening. But all of this to say, I do agree that men make great followers. They follow very well. I also think women uphold the patriarchy just fucking fine, even when they have degrees, even when they're in the workforce, even when they don't have to. And I think that's the problem too. We are all victims of the system. And some of us, few of us, are working to deconstruct it. And we are not even close to fully doing it. I am not even close to fully. I am always challenging myself to deconstruct. I'm always catching myself. I'm always finding new ways that I'm like, I don't know about that. Okay, so we did it. We watched the section that Discord asked us to watch. Yeah, I think there's something here, but I don't agree with the sentiment she ended up on. I also think women do this thing where they really fuck up with their communication, which I've done it too. I fall into it too, so no big deal. But we do this thing where we are trained to be kind of like petty about the way we're actually having the conversation. Like, if men weren't such good followers, like, would we even be here? It's like, it's not true though. It's not actually the issue. It is a consequence of the patriarchy that have trained little boys to follow suit with their oppressors, you know? And I agree in general that if men work to liberate themselves, we could liberate. But I also believe like the goal is not to liberate literally. The goal is to do the work that would even create the circumstance for that to be a reality. And we haven't even done that part yet. We are still trying to even do the work for that to be the reality. And I think we're all just trying to skip to the end. But I'm saying like, girl, we're not there yet. You know what I mean? Like, I agree that's the goal, but we haven't even done the work to make that a reality, right? This comes down to breaking generational curses, actually being the one who takes a stand and does something, but also making sure you have the discernment to make sure it's the right kind of stand, right? A sense of justice isn't enough. You need the wisdom. And that's earned through living your life. So who knows when you'll get it, right? Let's see. Discord said, Britt, Guts from Berserk was a follower at first. I think a lot of people who identify as men see themselves in him and the way he idolizes Griffith. Griffith was pretty feminine, but also had an incredible gravitas. But also, I don't know, it's a fantasy. Yeah, for sure. Like, I think ultimately, people feel for Guts too. There's a lot of Guts' story that's like really relatable. Men are victims. There's a lot there. We also forget like Guts is a struggling person, right? He's being tormented. He's in a lot of pain. And look, I haven't finished Guts or Berserk, so I don't know how it ends. I don't even know if we have an ending, right? Didn't the author die? So I don't even know where it goes from the first manga or the first few volumes / the anime. But I'll just say that I think if you watch the anime alone, the only thing you can take away from that anime is that like this is a very unhealed world and none of these people are healed enough to admire or pedestal, but all of them have their good parts and bad parts. And like humanity is not as good as it thinks it is, but it has the potential to be so much better. So even though I think as a whole humanity is not as good as it thinks it is, its potential to be better is absolutely there and available to it. But like, you know, will we ever reach that point? I think the part is like life itself is the point. Like the journey of life is to say that it's an ongoing journey forever. Again, this goes back to like everybody just wants it all to work out right now in their lifetime. You know, like they just want it all to happen for them now. It's not. Nothing we're doing now in terms of liberation is for us. It's for the future. Nothing we're doing about breaking generational curses is for us. It's for the future. Nothing about taking a stand over politics is about you. It's about the future. And if you keep thinking, well, why isn't it happening in my lifetime? It was never about you. So these men who are like, why can't I afford to live? Why can't I pay my bills? Well, because you're not thinking about the future. You're only thinking about you now, which is why you justify drop shipping. It's why you justify capitalism. It's why you justify like, well, if you just do it right, you know? And that's why there's this balance between like, how do I make it within the construct of the world if it's so evil and still end up a good person? Well, you don't end, well, it's very hard. It's very hard to die a good person. That's why people give up on it. And I'm saying, don't give up. Hold on. Wait, don't give up. But also, you know, let go of the attachment of seeing the outcome in your lifetime. And both of those two things have to be true at the same time, you know?